Welcome back to White Center Heights Park, one of the 200 parks brought to you by the people of King County. I'm King County Executive Dow Constantine. I want to recognize some of the organizations and the leaders who are here today. We have King County Council Member Rod Dombowski, Deshaun Quinn and Michelle Bentetua of the Open Space Equity Cabinet, David Patton from the Trust for Public Land. We have representatives from Forterra, from the Conservation Futures Committee, from the Nature Conservancy, and from the Mountains to Sound Greenway Trust, among others. Thank you all for being here. Now, as I alluded, we've been here at White Center Heights before, in fact, many times over the years. We've celebrated achievements of our staff. We celebrated the achievements of our partners. Behind me, we planted the ceremonial first and millionth tree in our Million Trees initiative. And by the way, we're well into our new 3 Million Trees initiative. Last fall, I had the privilege of meeting members of our new crews who are enhancing King County parks and trails as they also get the support to help transition into permanent housing. And in between, more people and families than ever came here to this park for a safe, healthy outdoor experience during the COVID pandemic, at a time when we all appreciated natural landscapes like never before. Anyone who's been here to hear me talk about in these various occasions has heard me talk about protecting open spaces. It's part of my history. It's how I got into government service in the first place, starting with a little wooded ravine near my childhood home just a few miles from here. Well, over time, as the population has grown and global and local environmental pressures have increased, the urgency around land conservation has become greater and greater. The importance has become clearer and clearer. And I've seen firsthand what can be achieved through open space preservation. I and some of us together have waded the slide channels of the Green and Cedar Rivers, where we've restored salmon habitat and reduced flood risks. We've explored the Bear Creek watershed near Redmond, where we protected mature forests and improved habitat for fish and wildlife. I've walked the shores of the lower Duwamish, where our partner cities, some of the most racially diverse communities in the country, helped create new public green space for all, while also reducing polluted stormwater flowing into the river. I met members of the Black Farmers Collective, met a beloved Hmong flower farmer, both of whom are thriving on farmland that King County protected long ago. And I met a mother and son who are now able to enjoy a new forest park we opened just a very short distance from here, near Boulevard Park in unincorporated King County, working with community to build a trail and bridge that crosses a wooded ravine. Very similar, really, to the place I talked about, the place that got me involved in public service in the first place. Well, each of these achievements started with land conservation. In fact, none of those accomplishments would have been possible without it. And over the past 40 years, King County has protected more than 100,000 acres of farms and forests and parks, reflecting the values and priorities of our region. Yet, more than 20% of King County residents, 500,000 people, do not live what you would be able to call near any green space or trail or park like this one. And that is to a great extent the legacy of systemic racism and the way in which communities were affected by racist policies, public and private, throughout the 20th century. In 2016, I joined partners to announce the Land Conservation Initiative, a regional alliance committed to protecting 65,000 acres of the last best places in King County, and to do it within a single generation rather than the century it would take us at the pace we were going. We worked with communities, cities, farmers, businesses, environmental advocates to develop a regional strategy that unifies our conservation efforts. And we're off to a strong start. But land conservation today is a lot more difficult than it used to be. While land values have soared, and I don't need to belabor that point for anyone here today, the Conservation Futures Program enacted by the state 50 years ago has declined pretty dramatically as a result of changes that have happened, particularly the 1% lid on property taxes. So here's the good news. Voters have the option to restore the rate of the Conservation Futures funding to what it was originally, when it was originally approved, so we can realize the full potential of this state-authorized funding. Now, I know from experience and from the results that the people of King County want to protect the spectacular natural environment that defines our region. And we see this over and over again. I know a lot of you feel it, but this is, when you get past all the noise of the day, one of the things that is really central to our identity here as a region. The reason so many people have chosen to live here is the rare opportunity to live in dynamic cities that are surrounded by mountain forests and connected to this glacier-cut sound. It's what we're about, and these places are here for us to enjoy and to experience, and also to steward because of the foresight and courage of previous generations. Well, this is our generation's moment, our moment to advance this essential work and save the last best places before we lose even more. So today I am transmitting to the County Council a measure for the November ballot that will rapidly accelerate land conservation throughout King County. For less than $2 per month, I believe the exact amount for the average home in King County is $1.81, we will be able to double our capacity to protect forests, rivers, trails, farmland, natural areas, and urban green space. This is restoring the Conservation Futures tax to what it was originally. And by restoring the local Conservation Futures program to its original rate, we will confront climate change by protecting mature forests. That is our most important mission of many important missions. We'll improve habitat for salmon, providing more food for Puget Sound orca. We'll provide more recreational opportunities for a growing population that seems to have a growing appetite to be in the out of doors. We will strengthen our vibrant local food economy, protect homes, farms, and roads from flooding and landslides, as some of you got to see in our restoration project along the shores of the Green River just a few weeks ago. And we will create more equitable access to green space. Now, I know we'll succeed because this is a shared commitment that reflects the character of our region. By mobilizing cities and nonprofits, including those gathered with us here today, and businesses and land trusts and environmental advocates, we will deliver on the promise of the Land Conservation Initiative. I look forward to working with members of the County Council this summer to offer the people of our region the opportunity to pick up the pace on land conservation for the benefit of everyone who lives here today and for those who will come after us. And Councilmember Dombowski has been a leader in this arena, and we're so pleased that he is here today as a strong ally for environmental stewardship. Councilmember.
I thought I had a little more time to get ready. Deshaun, would you go first?
Yes.
Yeah, let's get Deshaun. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
We split it up.
Dow, thank you. So you want to know why I'm here. So my name is Deshaun Quinn. I'm on the City Council, but I was able to co-chair the Land Conservation Advisory Committee. But what you didn't know is I got to do it with Councilmember Larry Phillips. And why that was so meaningful is actually my dad was able to work with him early in the 90s on the Parks Commission. So that connection was great. And when County Executive asked me to serve as a co-chair, I said I'd do it. But we needed to center equity. And was very excited in this work. So when we started, we knew that we needed to not be afraid. We needed to be courageous and go big because the need was so great. 5 years ago, I sat in a room with representatives from cities, businesses, farm communities, and environmental organizations. Our task was to partner to create a strategy to preserve our last, most important natural lands and urban green spaces in 30 years. It was a daunting task, but together we developed a concrete plan to implement the county's vision for accelerated actions to address the rapidly shrinking open spaces. We believed that by finishing the job in a single generation, we could save and protect lands before they were lost and do it in the most efficient way. It's gratifying now to see that this effort has moved forward and has successfully conserved accelerated actions to conservation lands. And in achieving that vision, we know that we also needed to protect urban open spaces in the built environment, to address health disparities in King County, and protect the quality of life for generations. You see, we cannot have a sustainable environment without equity. We cannot have true conservation of these critical lands unless the totality of communities see themselves in the solution. We cannot address climate change without addressing climate justice. So we work with communities, and those communities actually often experience the earliest and most acute impacts of climate change. They face historic and current inequities and have limited resources or capacity to adapt, and are provided the greatest access and opportunities that benefits and solutions provide. Our vision when we first came together was for a comprehensive strategy to both identify key conservation lands most at risk and to identify a funding strategy to allow protection through easements, tax incentives, and outright purchases. We also identified the need for revenue streams sufficient to meet the moment, to ensure that we had the capacity to accomplish this wide vision of protecting that's most important to our quality of life. Today, we stand together and embrace this next needed phase of the work, ensuring we have the resources to get the job done. Conservation Futures Levy is a key funding source used by King County and counties across Washington. And restoring it to its original level is a linchpin action to ensure we can conserve the last best places in our region. You know, the great thing is I'm a council member. I got to serve on the Land Conservation Initiative, and I also got to serve on the Equity Cabinet. It's something that I am so proud of. It was so gratifying how the county has worked with the community to ensure many voices guide and shape our conservation work. It's been an elected office. In government operations, I've been there long enough to see that sometimes good work by community-led advisory groups end up on the shelf, never resulting in solutions. Or there is a right framework, but not enough funding to turn it into results. But that's not the case with King County Land Conservation Initiative. The fact that Executive Constantine and members of the County Council are delivering the political will. I'm going to say that again. They are delivering the political will to meet the urgency of now, to adequately fund land conservation. It demonstrates their commitment to equitable access to the best places of our region has to offer. I have a special message to the former and current members of the Land Conservation Advisory Committee. You have to meet the moment with that energy, that passion, and the commitment to the next generation. I look forward to working with you all. My kids will benefit from your work. And a special shot to the Equity Cabinet. I get really emotional about it, but because we had this concept of centering community to help us make decisions, and before co-creation became a popular word, we were doing that work. I am so proud of you, Sarnisha. And I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce one of our Open Space Equity Cabinet members, Michelle Venator.
Thank you so much, Deshaun, for that great opening. As Deshaun mentioned, my name is Michelle Benatua. I have the great honor to be a current co-chair of the King County Open Space Equity Cabinet, along with Sarnisha Evans over here. We also serve on the Match Waiver Committee for the Conservation Futures Awards. And as Deshaun mentioned, the Open Space Equity Cabinet grew from the Land Conservation Initiative Advisory Group back in the before times, in the pre-pandemic times, when even then it was clear that additional work was needed to address equity and open space access. We are a group of advisors representing community-based organizations with experience working with communities on issues around and in parks and public spaces. And by advising the county on adjusting funding priorities and reducing barriers, we're helping prioritize projects in areas where need is the greatest. You know, during the past few years, we've all recognized how important our open spaces are to our physical and our mental health. And since 2020, 8 parks have been created or significantly expanded by investing $14 million in 38 acres, preserving open spaces in areas that face the greatest health inequities. So even during these times, we've been managing to work on these, on this great vision that Deshaun outlined for us. But yet, you know, that's just a start. There are $27 million still existing in pending and requested projects. And so the announcement today from our county executive about the proposed funding acceleration will really help sustain these critical investments for the future, for all of our kids and nieces and nephews and the next generation to come, especially those who are living in areas that don't have immediate access to beautiful spaces like this. So I just want to thank you all for being here, and thank you for the announcement and for the political will, as you mentioned it. And now, it's my great pleasure to get to introduce Councilmember Rod Dembowski.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, and thanks for the 2 introductions. Good morning, everybody. It is great to see you. Thanks for being here. My name is Rod Dembowski. I serve on the King County Council. I chair the Transportation, Economy, and Environment Committee, and I represent District 1, which is North King County. And it's just a real honor to be here today, and I am very excited about Executive Constantine's announcement that he is going to transmit a measure to us today, which I'll introduce at the council, to restore the Conservation Futures Program funding stream to what it should be, to its full capacity, to achieve the vision the Executive Constantine and our Department of Natural Resources and Parks has so carefully and strategically laid out. I like to think of work in the environmental space under the principle announced by the Iroquois Nation of 7 generations. Do today and act today and do the steps and take the steps necessary today that will have a positive impact 7 generations down the road. And Councilmember Quinn, you mentioned your kids. I brought my son here today, Evan, my older boy, because I think about him and all of our kids when we're doing this work and my childhood here in King County. Like Dow, I grew up playing in Maplewood Creek east of Renton, catching tadpoles and frogs about this time of year. going fishing in May Creek for trout out to Lake Wilderness on opening day. I floated the Cedar River, swam in Lake Washington, climbed Cougar Mountain and picnicked up there in high school. These are the great places that make King County so livable, and they're fast disappearing. From my time growing up here, we had well less than 1 million people. We're over 2.25 million people today, and we're paving over these places despite our best efforts under growth management, and we do a good job there, but we're paving over these last great places faster and faster. And I've seen in my work on the County Council the power of this program. Just a few examples up in the north end. The Wayne Golf Course, 88 acres, saddling the Sammamish River with the last mile of opportunity to protect key environmental lands for the fish runs and the salmon runs there. This program 20 years ago bought an easement that started the conservation, and about 3 years ago we finished the job in the face of development pressures to preserve all 88 acres of beautiful open space for folks to live and enjoy and to protect our salmon habitat. In Lake Forest Park, where access to the lake was only through a private club, the Conservation Futures Program acquired land on the lake for public access, for folks to come off our Burke-Gilman Trail and for kids to come down from Pinehurst and Lake City to get to Lake Washington and have that access. You don't have to be a member of a private club when you got the public access. At the headwaters of Denny Creek, adjacent to Big Fin Hill Park, on Sunday, we're going to go celebrate the acquisition of 7 acres funded by Conservation Futures dollars to protect those headwaters. And we're going to be joined there by the descendant of Chief Sealth himself. Our original folks here believe in this program and the power of it. I've lived it. I've seen it in my work here on the council. And the fantastic thing about this is government at its best. Executive Constantine and our Department of Natural Resources and Parks has put together the plan. We have identified the 65,000 acres. We know the parcels and the places, the riverways and the waterways and the wetlands. But every year, applications come in to protect these lands. And our Conservation Futures Committee doesn't have enough resources to do all that they want to do and all that the community wants to do. And that's why this supercharging of the program is so important. And Deshaun, you mentioned the fierce urgency of now. We are named in honor of Dr. King at the county. And I just want to close with the full quote, because I think it really captures this moment. And this he did say from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. There is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. This proposal is vigorous and positive action. It comes from tremendous leadership from our executive. We are confident that the voters want to do this, and we look forward to getting their approval this year. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name's David Patton. I'm the Regional Director for the Trust for Public Land. And for those that don't know, the Trust for Public Land has been working across the country as well as in Washington State for nearly 50 years to create parks and protect land for people with the goal of connecting everyone to the outdoors. And I want to recognize that there are dozens of organizations committed to supporting King County and the communities across the county to ensure that everyone has equitable access. Now, Washingtonians know the importance of parks and land conservation and have made it a priority for advancing our values and our quality of life. 2021 marked the 50th anniversary of the landmark Conservation Futures Program. It was enacted by the Washington Legislature in 1971, and 14 counties rely on it today to generate the funds needed to permanently protect and maintain open space, farms, forests, parks, and trails that we all rely on. In King County, we have utilized this program time and time again to create one of the most desirable and resilient places to live. For example, in 2019, I stood with Executive Constantine in Issaquah, where TPL partnered with the community, King County, and the city to permanently protect forest land at risk of being lost forever. This new forest now serves as a spectacular gateway to Cougar Mountain Regional Wildland Park. thanks to our ability to mobilize across the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And that's just one of the many examples throughout this beautiful region where we've protected the natural landscapes for this generation, as well as all that come to follow. In addition, access to the outdoors is, I believe, a fundamental human need. Yet there are significant outdoor equity gaps in our region, as has been highlighted already today. As we look to meet the parks and natural area needs in our county, this program is one of the best options to ensure all residents benefit from the power of public land. And I also want to commend the executive for continuing to deliver on the promise of the Land Conservation Initiative. As it was mentioned, dozens of individual citizens and groups came together to create a vision for the future of open space and natural areas in our county. And this today is a bold step to fulfill the community goals that were set forth in that plan and ensure that we continue to live in the best place in this country. And as the executive said, we are not able to act fast enough under the current structure of the Conservation Futures program in order to meet the critical needs. What the executive is proposing will help us move faster while we still have a chance. And this is the right time to act, and why the Trust for Public Land is here today in support of the executive in advancing this proposal. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming today, and I'll turn it back to the executive.
Well, thank you so much, David, and thanks to all of our speakers. This is an exciting opportunity. It is something that the people of King County have strongly supported over the years, and I'm just going to reiterate, because of the operation of state law that really occurred after Conservation Futures was originally approved by the legislature a half century ago, the rate has eroded now by just slightly more than 50%. Even while the population has expanded dramatically and property values have and continue to rise dramatically. So this is urgent. It does not get any easier with each passing day, and this is an opportunity for what objectively is a pretty light lift for the average homeowner, as I say, of less than $2 a month to save the things that we care the most about in this region. So be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there specific places right now that are waiting for this funding?
There are many of them. I'm sure you understand that we don't talk about specific acquisitions when we're trying to buy real estate because it tends to cause them to become more expensive. But there's a really well laid out plan, and our staff as well as private partners are constantly working and identifying properties that either may be available now for purchase or may be under threat of development, pieces that need to be protected in order to keep contiguous parcels together. I've been at this for a long time. I served on the Seattle Open Space Oversight Committee even before I was in public office. And so I know that this can be a delicate dance that goes on. And we also have nonprofit partners who help with the acquisitions because they're sometimes able to move faster than the government is able to move, and then we transfer the land to public ownership. But we have a very good idea of exactly where we need to be acquiring lands to protect the natural systems that are under increasing stress today, as well as provide recreational opportunities for a growing population. Others?
Are there other methods that you use to protect land? Are there easements or other ways, or is it almost all just acquiring, buying the land?
No, we use conservation easements quite a bit, and so that is where the property owner maintains the underlying title ownership, but we buy the development rights, and there are many flavors of that. And that is a very efficient way to protect land. Often it comes with restrictions on public access and so forth, and so it depends on the use to which you want to put the land or the particular set of values that are most important to protect in that land. But our staff, as well as our nonprofit sector partners, have gotten quite good at understanding what tool is right for what situation and getting the most value for the dollars we have available. And often, I would add, it is the case that a property owner, let's say a legacy farm owner, might want to keep their land, might want to stay there, but can't afford to do it anymore. And if we're able to relieve the pressure of the upward pressure on property values and the increasing cost to maintain that property, they can preserve it in a way that is also beneficial to the public. So we have a lot of those kind of partnerships that happen.
Can you kind of clarify procedurally the next steps? You submit it to the council, and then just kind of go from that.
The county council will receive the legislation. Councilmember Dembowski will sponsor it. It will presumably be assigned to his committee. They will hold a hearing or hearings, and then the date by which it needs to be placed on the ballot is escaping me for the moment. But if anyone here from our staff can tell us, yes, Chad.
In July.
In July. So. In July, end of July, they need to take a vote
for the November general.
for the November general election ballot.
And this would be, if it's approved, it's a property tax, correct?
Yeah, and so the existing tax is a property tax. This is just restoring the rate to what it was originally.
Can
Go ahead.
you talked about how the rate has been cut almost in half, mostly due to state actions. Can you be a little more specific about why that's happened?
This is mostly the 1% lid on property tax. So there's for existing property taxes, although the state has managed to exempt themselves from some of this, but for existing property taxes, there's a 1% lid on the aggregate amount that can be collected from year to year. But population growth, that is the increased demand for government services and things like access to open space, and particularly inflation, and particularly in land, has led this gap to open up between our means and the need. And so the original rate was 6.25 cents per thousand. And the current rate is like 3.12 cents per thousand. And so as the need increases and as the cost of land we're trying to acquire increases, the amount of money has been pretty much flat. And that is a big problem moving forward. And that's why you look at what we're doing now and we know what needs to be done, but our estimate is it would take a century to accomplish it. Much of that land is not going to be available a century from now. Others? Are we good? Okay. This is exciting for me because, as I say, this is what brought me into public service in the first place, and I think it's something we can all unite around. The idea of land conservation, of protecting parks and farms and forests, is at the intersection of so many of the things we care about as a community. Obviously, from the environmental qualities that we all identify with as Northwesterners, to food security, to notions of equity and racial justice that we are really working hard to center today in our work as a government and as a community. So this is a great opportunity for us to unite, a great opportunity for us to do something of value for those who will follow us here in future generations. And I really appreciate all of our partners who've come out to help today and all of you for being here. Thank you.